What's up guys, Kyle here again, and today we're going to take a look at the Peavey Valveking 100. Let's do it. All right, hope you guys are doing great today. We're going to check out the Peavey Valveking. This amp has kind of a crappy reputation, and that's probably because it was a $400 tube amp manufactured in China back when Peavey was still making the 6505 series and the Ultra series in the USA. So this was looked at as an ultra budget entry into the market for Peavey. I think this and the Windsor were the cheapest tube amps that you could get on the market at the time from like known manufacturers. I really don't think that there was anything that you could get at a lower cost than those. I think they were both like 400 bucks each new. It was crazy low for an all tube amplifier. So they were popular for that reason. You see both of them pop up all the time. I'll probably get a Windsor on the channel here at some point as well, even though I never liked them. The Valveking is not bad. It's not great. It's got the Peavey voicing in it for sure. It suffers from a lack of clarity, number one, and the EQs can be kind of hard to balance out without making the amp sound really harsh. Now, there are a lot of mods on the internet for this amp because it was so popular to kind of help it get into a better sounding tonal range. Some of them were to basically make the amp a little bit fuller, a little bit thicker, add a little bit more clarity. Some of them were to make it less bright because it is very bright. I've got the treble dialed down here. The mids are very touchy. They can get harsh really quickly and kind of honky. And then same with the presence. If you have it too high, it just gets a little rough on the ears. So I also have the effects loop jumped, which is a common thing that a lot of owners did to kind of add a little bit more clarity into the tone. I'm not sure technically what this does, if it adds the tube for the effects loop into the signal. I'm not sure if this even has a tube for the effects loop, but it does make a difference. We're actually gonna pull that out. I had the Deadwell Duality DX as always on in front of this amp, and it made it sound killer, but we're going to turn that off. This amp also has dedicated boost and gain switches to increase the volume and increase the gain on the lead channel. I had both of those in when I was playing the demo as well as this. Gain was low, but if you pop that gain switch out, it kind of lowers the gain significantly. It makes the amp sound fatter and kind of just really bland. So that's why I had that in. We're gonna put everything back to noon on the lead channel and mess around with it and see how it sounds. Okay, so everything is back to noon. I left the volume where it was and I left the gain at 9 o'clock. So real quick before we jump into messing around with this amp and turning some knobs, if this is your first time here at my channel, I would really appreciate it if you guys would consider subscribing. I'm constantly taking awesome high gain amps, or in this case, budget high gain amps, and trying to get the best out of them and then miking it and then giving you guys the unprocessed audio from these demos so you can get the most true to the real world sound as possible. So if that's something that you're into, I'm checking out amps, pedals, pickups, all sorts of stuff all the time. So please, if you like this video, hit the like button on the way out and consider subscribing. I'd love to have you guys here for the next one. All right, so let's get into some tones. All right, so I am playing an Epiphone Les Paul Standard, made in China. Might as well throw it in the trash, right? This guitar actually surprised me. It sounds and feels great. I threw a better bridge pickup in it, and it really makes the guitar come alive, so you're not hearing these stock pickups. This is a Vineham Rampage, which is a high output PAF. Let's hear what this thing sounds like at noon. All right, so first impressions, everything at noon, it kind of has this weird, almost like farty low end thing going on. Not my favorite, but other than that, the amp doesn't sound terrible by any means. So let's turn that gain up to noon, see how much gain is on tap there. Again, doesn't sound bad, but it's getting kind of farty in the low end. So let's turn that up to 3 o'clock, the gain. Farty low end is fartier than ever. Let's turn that gain back. Let's turn the bass down. Let's turn the middle and the treble up. Not bad. So tonally it sounds pretty good. The distortion kind of has this weird buzzy character to it that's a little bit unpleasant on its own. I doubt in a band mix you would really notice it, but there's this weird sort of grain to the distortion that is just a little bit unpleasant. It sounds a little bit fuzzy or something. But not terrible. So let's bump up the presence and resonance a little bit and see what that does. All right, so overall not bad. That's not a bad crunch tone. To me, that sounds like if you were going for a classic rock tone, that would get you closer than say like the green channel on a 5150 for sure. It's not as fat, it's a little bit chimier up top. All right, so not bad at all. Let's kick that little gain boost in and see how much of a difference that makes. So that adds quite a bit of gain. It thins things out significantly. It takes away that farty low end that we were talking about, but it also kind of makes things a little bit harsh. So let's turn that back off for right now. Boost volume in. That sounds pretty good. Let's pull that out again. It sounds a little bit more lively and inspired with the boost in. So let's leave that in for now. All right, so again, not bad. It's not great, but it's not bad. Let's turn the gain up. One thing I do remember hearing about this amp for a long time, because I actually was looking at them back when all I had was a 6505 and I wanted a backup amp. A lot of people said that they didn't have enough gain or they weren't like heavy enough for metal, whatever the hell that means. Back then I was reading a lot on Ultimate Guitar Forum, which is, you know, a huge mistake most of the time because the information on there is terrible. This amp definitely has far more than enough gain than anyone would ever need, especially with the gain boost kicked in. But here's how it sounds. No gain boost kicked in. We're at 11 o'clock on the gain knob. So as you can tell, it's more saturated, but it's still pretty farty on the low end. Let's turn that bass down a little bit more. Turn that gain up to noon. All right, so better. The bass on this amp seems to add some unpleasant frequencies. So let's turn the bass down a little bit, turn the resonance up and see if we can kind of compensate for that. It definitely helps, but the low end just doesn't sound amazing on its own. So let's turn that gain up to like 2 o'clock. More gain, but again, the saturation just sounds weird. The amp is definitely losing its clarity as you pull the gain up too, which, you know, a lot of amps do, but some amps are pretty good at staying clear all the way through. So this one definitely gets muddier as you turn the gain up. Let's back it down a little bit. Let's kick in that onboard boost. See how much that thins things out? That's kind of crazy. Let's turn the bass back up to about 11 o'clock. It's a little bit harsh. Let's turn the mids and treble down a little bit. So it's still flubby, but it's tight enough that you could get by without a boost. I wouldn't recommend it if you're trying to go for super tight stuff with your right hand. Let's kick the gain boost off and kick an outboard boost on. We're back on the duality. Let's see how that sounds. All right, so we're almost there. That definitely tightens up the low end better than the onboard boost does, or the gain switch. So gain is at noon. That's not bad. It really isn't. Let's take some mids out. I don't know what the hell I was trying to say there. So now we have a little bit of a scoopy thing going on. Woo! Butchered that one. Yeah, it does the scoopy thing kind of okay, but that seems to fatten the amp up and reintroduce some of that sagginess that makes it sound unpleasant on the low end. Nobody likes a saggy Maggie. So let's turn those mids back up. We're gonna turn that boost back on. We're gonna kick the bass up a little bit. We're gonna kick the gain way down. Man, I just can't get it to where it's not harsh and muddy. It's weird. It's getting close, but it's just not quite there. So let's put this little jumper cable back in and not touch anything else and see how much of a difference that makes. So now it's really, really bright. It brightens things up, but it does kind of take the blanket off the speakers a little bit. So let's kick that gain boost out and see how good we can do with that effects loop jumped, but without the built-in gain boost. So that sounds better. It's still got that harshness there that's really hard to get rid of, honestly. But it sounds better now that you have this jumped with the gain boost out and gain at noon with a good boost out front. It sounds pretty good. The low end's a little bit mushy still. It doesn't have a nice punch, nice tight punch to it, but it's not bad. All right, so we're gonna play a riff and drop D and call it a day, but yeah, this amp is not as bad as its reputation that precedes it, but it's not great either. It's a great stopgap. If you find one for 200 bucks, you really need a high gain tube amp that's gonna be loud in a band setting to hold you over until you can get something better. If you doctor it up a little bit, it sounds fine, but it's never gonna be my first choice or my recommendation to anybody unless all they have is 200 bucks. And even then I'd say try to find a used like Ultra 60 on the low, but those are getting a little harder to come by. Cheap. So anyways, here's a riff. Alright guys, that's going to be it for the Peavey Valveking. Not the greatest amp in the world, but if you can find one for 200 bucks and you're in a pinch, you need an amp, I wouldn't hesitate to grab it for sure. It doesn't sound bad as long as you boost it and kind of make sure you EQ it just right. Some new tubes would probably help as well, but yeah, that was fun. It just goes to show that you don't have to spend a lot of money to get decent usable tones. You really don't. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, hit the like button on the way out. Look down in the description if you'd like to support the channel. Check out my Patreon, my Facebook group, all my Amazon affiliate links, everything that helps the channel grow. Would really appreciate it and love to have you guys back for the next one. Kyle here again. We'll see you guys soon.